that we have three great speakers for today's webinar. And we will start our first session with Dr. Willy Renandya. Let me introduce Dr. Willy before he will deliver his presentation. Dr. Willy currently is teaching at National Institute of Education, Singapore. But in terms of educational wise, he was spending some of his time studying in Indonesia, in Sanata Dharma, Yogyakarta, for his BA in teaching English as a foreign language, and also for his first MA in teaching English also as a foreign language from the same school. But then he received his second MA from University of Hawaii, Manoa, teaching English as a second language as his subject. And last, his education was his PhD from University of Wisconsin, Madison, USA. In terms of interest in teaching and researching, Dr. Willy has extensive listening as one of his major, and also reading, extensive reading, language curriculum development, language proficiency development and assessment, second language acquisition, and second language pedagogy. If you browse on internet, Dr. Willy has extensive list of publications on his profile in book chapters, in forms of books, and also articles published in different journals. So he's also been participating as speakers in language conferences and delivering keynote addresses, as well as featured and plenary speakers. Dr. Willy, I hope I do justice to your profile that has been quite reputable that I've seen. Without further ado, I will give you your time for presentation in 40 minutes, and we do follow up with the question and answer for 10 minutes. Dr. Willy, that one moment, sir, please.
Okay, I'm on now. Good afternoon, everyone. Can I just, before I start, can I just ask you to turn on your audio and say hello to me? Can you do that for me? Is it possible for you to turn on your audio?
Hello.
Yeah, hello. Hello.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello.
Very good. Very good. Yes, thank you very much. This is what happens in the actual classroom when we can hear the voice of our students. Yeah. So that is the first thing that I wanted to do to you. And here is another greeting from me. It's my privilege. It's my honor to be here this afternoon. And today I'm going to share with you one or two things about what I know about the use of technology in language teaching. But before I do that, let me just introduce to you very briefly again my university. My university is located in Singapore. It's very near from Indonesia. And if you don't know it already, people can study in my universities on the Indonesian government scholarship. It's an LPDP approved university. And my university is a very good university. It's probably one of the best universities in Asia and also in the world. I belong to the Fakultas Keguruan. Locally, it's called the National Institute of Education, Nanyang Technological University. And we have a range of very interesting graduate programs for you at the master's level and also at the doctoral levels. So if you are able to get a scholarship from the Indonesian government, please consider coming and studying with me or with us at the university, Nanyang Technological University. Ladies and gentlemen, my presentation today is this. It's a very simple idea. What happens if we are able to make use of technology in our teaching, but at the same time, if we are able to combine, to marry technology and pedagogy, is it then going to be a marriage made in heaven? I am going to explain that if that is the case, if you are able to combine technology and pedagogy nicely and harmoniously, I think you'll be able to do a very good job in engaging your students in your classroom, whether you're teaching in high school or whether you're teaching at the language center in the university. Ladies and gentlemen, technology nowadays is everywhere. We can't really live without technology. And today in particular, we can't really teach without technology. We simply have to use technology to reach out to our students, to also engage them in the learning process. One of the questions that people often ask me is this: will technology be used, so much in education that eventually technology will replace you and me? Will technology replace teachers one day? If somebody asks you that, Linda or Santri, what would the answer be? Yes, no, maybe, or I don't know? Well, what I do know is this: if you do not know how to use technology, if you're a teacher and you don't know how to use technology, I think one day you will be replaced by those teachers who know how to use technology in the classroom. Yeah, going forward 10 years, 20 years, 50 years down the road, you will see the use of technology, in a more major way in education. It doesn't matter whether you teach language, mathematics, or any other subject areas. Technology is going to be there with us. The question for us, if you're a language teacher, if you're an English teacher, the question of us is this: will technology be able to improve the quality of language learning in the classroom? Is technology a silver bullet for language teaching and language learning? If you look at the literature, if you look at the research literature or the professional literature in ELT, in English language teaching, you will find that people have been saying things like this: yes, technology will transform language learning. Technology can enhance language learning. Technology can support language learning. What does it mean actually when people say that, yes, it can support, enhance, and transform language learning? Do they mean that the use of technology, or when we use technology, the English language proficiency of our students will improve a great deal? Is that what they're trying to say? Let us find out together. Yeah, let me walk you through one study, one research study that was done recently. This is a very, very interesting study, research study. It was done in China, and it was published in one of the top journals in our field. And the name of the journal is System. It's one of those Q1 high impact journal in our field. And the title is very interesting. Look at the title: the more technology, the better. Yeah, let's look at this very carefully. A comparison of teacher-student interactions in high and low technology use in elementary EFL classrooms in China. I think you can relate to this because China is very much like, the teaching of English in China is very much like the teaching of English in Indonesia. In many places in Indonesia, the situation is almost quite similar. So I thought this research is extremely important because the researchers are looking at two groups of teachers. One group of teachers use a lot of technology, and the other group of teachers do not use as much technology. And the researchers want to find out the quality of the lesson, the quality of the teaching and learning that Panitia, please make me a co-host so that you don't have to turn me on and off. Can you do that, please? Yeah, my audio was off just now. Please make me a co-host.
Yes, I'm sorry
Yeah.
for the technological problems.
Okay, so here is the context of the study again. Yeah, the study was done in villages, in small towns in China. And the study involved two groups of teachers, yeah, the high and the low technology use. And what is of interest to the researchers is the quality of teaching that happens in the classroom, the interaction that happens between the teacher and the students, okay? Now, very quickly, what do you think happens? What do you think the teachers with a lot more technology in the classroom are likely to have a lot more interaction in the classroom, or the results are just the same between the two? Yes, maybe, same, different? Very interesting. Look at this. The study found that there was no major differences between the two groups of classrooms. In both set of classroom, there is very minimal, very little use of English. So that's not a very good thing, because in an English classroom, we want to make sure that the students and the teachers use a lot of English, yeah? But apparently that's not what happens. In terms of the kind of questions that the teachers ask, it's the same thing. Teachers mostly ask display questions and directives. So these are the kind of questions that you often hear in the English language classroom, like, you know, what time is it now? What day is it now? What is your name? Display questions, yeah? Directives include questions like, hey, open, you know, page 10. Please work in groups. Very simple kind of things that happen in the classroom. In terms of feedback, feedback is another important indicator that learning happens in the classroom. Very little corrective feedback. So from this particular study, we can see very clearly that it seems that technology does not seem to have any influence on the quality of language learning and language teaching in the classroom. So that is one study that was recently completed. Let me now share with you another study. Now, this one is very, very interesting because this is not just a single study. The researchers did an analysis of many, many, many studies that were done in the past. And they collected something like 350 studies that were done in the past. And the studies involved the use of technology on the one hand, and also studies that compare the use of or traditional methods of teaching. Yeah, so it's a very interesting study looking at what actually researchers have found when they compared teachers who use technology and teachers who did not use technology or use traditional methods of teaching. Results? Same, different? Do you think technology has any effect on the quality of teaching, on the improvement of students' learning? Bulinda, very quickly, yes, no, maybe, the same, different?
It's the same.
Interesting, isn't it? Yeah, this is a very big study, and overall, the researchers did not find anything major in terms of the effect of technology on language learning. They found, however, that technology was very effective, was very good at improving the enunciation, the pronunciation of the students. So it had some effect, some important effect on the students' ability to use the language orally, especially in terms of pronunciation. Also, technology allows students to talk a little bit more. Now, talk here means either writing or speaking. Yeah, in a chat room, for example, in applications that allow students to interact using some gadget. I think that allows students to use a little bit more English, either in writing or in speaking. Now, the question for us is this: if technology is used in that way, will that improve language learning? The answer could be yes, no, or maybe. I think at this point, we have to say that probably not. Yeah, we need to be very careful now. Technology does not solve your problem. Technology will have to use in a certain way so that it can produce the desired result. So that is part one of my presentation. Okay, next, I'm going to discuss with you 3 areas where technology is often used in language teaching or in the classroom. Yeah, point number 1 is what happens if technology is just used without any change or only with a small change in pedagogy. So technology minus pedagogy, if you like. Number 2, what happens if we use technology and the use of technology is informed by a good set of educational principles? And then section 3, the last one, is something that is of interest to us. What happens if technology is used and its use is based on what we know about the nature of second language learning? In other words, principles or pedagogy that is related to second language learning or second language acquisition. Yeah. Let's look at the first one. Using technology, but with minimal change in pedagogy. So this is the case of a simple substitution. In the old days, we use paper and pencil, but these days we use technology to replace pencil and paper. Document sharing, for example. Yeah, in the past, we have to pass on the paper to people in order for them to be able to interact in some way. But today we can produce a shareable document through Google Doc, for example. And that allows students to, work together maybe using WhatsApp for teaching. Yeah. In the old days, we have to physically send information to our students or via email, but now we can do it via WhatsApp. Spell check is now available. That is, technology that teachers and students can use. Moodle is and Google Meet is a platform that people can use to exchange ideas and also to, make information or contents available on the internet. But without technology, without pedagogy, these are just, technology that may or may not be particularly useful for improving our students' English language proficiency. In the past, we used printed text, printed reading materials, but now there is a possibility for us to use digital text. Yeah, both have pluses and minuses. And one question that people have been asking is this: which one is more effective? Which one helps the students to be able to read with deeper comprehension? Is it printed text or is it digital text? Now, interestingly, for reading serious type of reading, for reading with deeper comprehension, I think printed text is still superior compared to electronic text. The reason is very simple. Electronic text can be very distracting because as you are reading something on the internet, for example, on your mobile gadget, for example, you may find that there is a lot of interaction. And because of that, you won't be able to concentrate. You won't be able to focus on the text itself. Yeah. The way you teach grammar, for example, if you don't change the way you teach grammar and simply using technology to deliver the same grammatical points to your students, I don't think this is going to make any difference in terms of what the students learn in the classroom. If you've been teaching, for example, grammar as knowledge in the old ways, and now you are using technology to teach the same idea to your students, then chances are, you can't expect any interesting or any major differences in terms of the result or in terms of the learning that happens in the classroom. There are many reasons why people simply use technology without thinking very carefully about the pedagogy that supports the use of technology. I will mention some of this here. Yeah. Maybe people don't have a lot of time. Maybe people find themselves, thrust in during the pandemic, you have to use technology. So simply what you need to do is just transform or transfer what you did previously, and then now you just use technology to deliver your lesson. Sometimes it's a matter of choice. Yeah, some people have a lot of choices, but some other people have limited choices. And very often it is the directive of the higher management asking you to use some kind of technology to engage your students. Other reasons include low motivation, especially for the older people. If they are 50 or 60 years old, they don't see any reason why they should change the way they teach. Okay. If that is what is happening, you're using technology without making any significant change in the way you teach, then can you expect your students to improve on their ability to use English in the classroom or outside the classroom? Yes, no, maybe? The answer is probably not really, maybe, but most likely no. Moving on, we are now going to look at how a certain set of pedagogical principles can be used to accompany the use of technology. Now, these are principles. These are principles that we all know are very good. These are principles that are applicable in any kind of educational settings, whether you teach language, whether you teach science, whether you teach geography, these principles are likely going to apply. I am sharing with you here 5 principles, not 6, 5. 5 principles, yeah? Now, these are 5 principles that educators, that researchers, that scholars believe are important. Every teacher must understand the principles of these 5 principles if they want to become an educator, if they want to become a teacher, a language teacher, or other subject matter teachers. One principle, the first principle is called personalized learning. The idea behind this is that learning happens optimally if and only if you are paying attention, you are attending to the individual needs of your students. It's very easy to say, but it's difficult to do. Yeah, but that is a principle that we all know is very good. Your students are not the same. Some of the students are higher ability, some are lower ability, some are less motivated, others are more motivated. As a teacher, you need to think about ways in which you can address the different needs of your students. In other words, you need to be able to personalize your teaching. In other words, you need to be able to customize your teaching in some way. Point number 2, another important principle is engagement. Engagement in learning. The idea is that if the students are not engaged mentally, cognitively, affectively, socially, and kinesthetically, then chances are they won't be learning very much from your lesson. Yeah, people have been saying that your job as a teacher is to engage 90% of your students 90% of the time. And this idea is based on research that was done in the past. Researchers who look at what effective teachers actually did in the classroom. And what came out in that study was that the most effective teachers were able to engage a lot of the students, the majority of the students, most of the time. Yeah. And some people have suggested actually that the engagement is the holy grail of learning. Without engagement, no learning can happen in the classroom. The next one is authentic learning. That is another important idea from education, authenticity. The students will need to see that what they learn in the classroom has real-world application outside the classroom. Yeah. So if your teaching focuses mostly on grammatical structures all the time, students will soon find out that, hey, grammar is important, but it's not that important outside the classroom, actually. It may be very important in the examination, in the test, but the more important thing for the students is to acquire more vocabulary, probably, and to be able to use the language for real communication, either for writing purposes, either for exchanging ideas, in social media using English, rather than spending a lot of time learning grammar in the classroom. Authenticity, in other words, is very, very important. Yeah, authentic learning. And then feedback is also very important. Again, educational theories suggest very strongly that feedback is probably more important than what you first did when you taught your students. The first time you teach your students, chances are they will just forget what they have learned from you. And because of that, you need to provide opportunities to, for the students to relearn what they have just learned earlier on. And that is where feedback comes in. So feedback becomes very important. It plays an important role in language learning. And finally, we now know that learning is or should be collaborative in nature. Students should be engaged in social interaction, talking, discussing, debating with other students as well. So these are 5 ideas. There are many more ideas out there, 5 major principles that people, researchers, educators believe are very important for us teachers to use in the classroom. It doesn't matter whether you teach English or other subject areas, okay? Now here is somebody who has done a lot of research in education, has written a lot of books, and this is what he says: to improve education, focus on pedagogy and not just technology. Yeah, and I agree fully that should be the case when you engage your students, when you teach your students in the classroom or outside the classroom. Like right now, you're using a lot of remote teaching. Okay, the same question again. If you can turn on your audio, you can respond to my question very quickly. If technology is used in that way, if the use of technology is accompanied by a set of good educational principles, will that help your students improve on their English language proficiency? Yes? No? Maybe?
Maybe.
Yeah, the answer is probably maybe. Yeah, if you're lucky, the answer could be yes. But I doubt that the students will improve on their English language proficiency. But, if you do this, I would say that you've done a good job because you're applying what you know about, important principles in learning in the classroom when you use technology for teaching English. Okay, now the last one. The last one is what happens if your use of technology is informed by second language pedagogy. I hope you can see the difference, yeah? In the previous discussion, we talked about general educational principles, but now we are looking at second language educational principles. In other words, the kind of principles, the kind of ideas that are directly relevant for language teaching, for language learning, for improving your students' English language proficiency. And I'm going to share with you 3 ideas, and all the 3 ideas begin with L. The first one is language input. That is one big principle. The second one is language processing. And the third one is language use. Yeah, so 3 ideas that I want to share with you. And all these ideas are related to what we know from research about the nature of language learning, about the nature of language acquisition outside, inside, and also outside the classroom. Let's look at the first one. Yeah, L1 is language input. What do we know about language input in relation to technology? I think it's very, very clear that technology provides a lot of opportunities for our students to be exposed to a much larger amount of English language input. And from research, we know that input basically is language that we hear and language that we can see. So from reading and listening. And research tells us very clearly that input is a prerequisite, the precondition to language learning, to language development. Without input, language learning will not happen in your class. I think this is particularly important in places like Kupang and also in other places in Indonesia, where the amount of language exposure tend to be quite limited. Technology can provide that solution for you. Yeah, in other words, if there's no input, no learning. A little input, just minor or little learning that can happen in the classroom. Yeah. So again, like I said, today, input is just a click away. There's a lot of ebooks available. There's a lot of graded readers available on the internet. TED Talks, they are all free and they can provide a lot of additional input to your students. Netflix, talk shows on TV, and also from YouTube's and from other medias. So point number one is when you use technology, make sure that you use technology in order to provide or to increase the amount of input to your students. Why is input so important? As I said earlier on, input is about reading, input is about listening. And what do we know about the importance of reading and listening? In particular, extensive reading and extensive listening. Now, here is a book, and here's the author of that book. And this is what they say. This is what the author says. I'm going to read to you very slowly and very carefully so that you have an idea about the importance of exposure, the importance of language input, the importance of reading and listening. Yeah, very carefully and very slowly. Good things happen to students who read and listen a great deal in the foreign language. Research studies show they become better, more confident readers, they write better, their listening and speaking abilities improve, and their vocabularies become richer. So this is not just one person, this guy, Richard Day, talking or believing that language input through reading and listening is important, that reading and listening can help your students develop their English language proficiency, but there are many, many other people who will be saying about the same thing. Yeah, that input is so important. And the question then is this: how do we get input? How do we, how do we provide opportunities for our students to receive, to enjoy, to get a lot more input from technology, from the internet in particular? Now, here is one example. Storyline Online. It has hundreds, if not thousands of stories available for free. If you teach young children, for example, or teenagers, I'm sure they will enjoy listening to a lot of interesting stories read aloud by, movie actors, celebrities, politicians, singers, dancers, and things like that. Again, it's free, freely available. Yeah. If you want your students to be doing a lot more reading, where do we get the materials? Now, here is one source for you. Yeah. Books for Asia, made available by Asia Foundation. Again, it's free, freely available. Your job is to pick one's books that you feel are relevant, useful, interesting for your students. These are some examples of the books that are available. All storybooks, very well written, very interesting stories. Locally, it has a lot of local content in terms of its cultural content. So it should be very interesting to your students. Listening materials or video materials are also widely available these days. Remember, when you use technology, one thing you need to keep in mind is how can I increase the amount of language input through listening, through viewing, and through reading to our students. This is another source. Yeah, the website is ELLO, triple L. Again, it's free, completely free. If you look at the small numbers here on the right-hand side of my screen, yeah, all those numbers refer to the number of audio materials and video materials that are available. I would say thousands. Yeah, from the simple one to the more difficult ones. Again, you have to pick and choose. And your job as a teacher is to help your students to choose listening materials or video materials that are easy to understand, that are useful for your students. Now, I know that teachers are very busy people. You may not have all the time to find, free sources from, or reading materials or listening materials from the internet. Now, if you have some financial resources, if you work in a university, for example, or in a well-resourced schools, then what you can do is to sign up or to subscribe to a very nice digital library of graded readers. It's called XReading. Now that's the name, that's the guy, Paul Goldberg is the guy who developed the program, who developed the digital library. It has more than 1,000 graded readers. Graded readers are stories written for English language learners, and they are graded from the easiest, very simple one to the mid-level difficulty to the more advanced level. And what is interesting is that students can borrow the books, they can read the books online, and they can listen to the content, to the stories being read aloud by a professional reader. Yeah, so they can do both reading and listening at the same time, at any time, 24 hours a day. Now, this is a complete package. Yeah, the digital library has a complete learning management system, which allows the teachers to do all these wonderful things like tracking students' reading progress, assessing their understanding, guiding student selections, assigning activities, and things like that. So it's a complete package, but you have to pay a little bit. Yeah, it's not free because all the books are copyrighted. The books belong to publishers like Cambridge University Press, Oxford University Press, Macmillan, and things like that. And they will never make their books available for free. Yeah. It's not very expensive. If you are interested, please write to me and I'll be able to introduce you to the owner or the guy who developed this program. Yeah. So L1 basically in relation to technology is for us to provide as much language input as possible. L2 is about language processing. Again, this is something that I learned from the professional literature on second language acquisition. Input alone is not enough. Please pay attention, people. I think you have heard about this before. Just listening and reading only is not particularly useful. Yeah, in terms of the processing that must happen in your head, the language will have to be accessible. The language in the listening, in the video materials, in the reading materials will have to be comprehensible, easy to understand. If they're not understandable, students will not learn anything. I'm sure you've been watching maybe, movies in Japanese or in Korean, maybe. After watching Korean movies for 1 year, do you think you will be able to pick up the language? I doubt it. Yeah, because the language may not be comprehensible. So your job is to make sure that that you help the students select reading materials that is at their level, accessible and comprehensible. But more important than that is this: the content. The story itself will have to be so interesting, will have to be so compelling, will have to be magical. What I mean is this. I think you have had this experience before. Yeah, you pick a small book, a story book, you start reading page 1. Yeah, the moment you get to page 1, you feel that, wow, this one is so interesting. I must continue reading it until I get to the end, to the last page. That is what I mean by magical content. Yeah, the kind of reading that makes you stay reading for 1 hour, for 2 hours, or for 3 hours. Yeah, here's an example of kids who find time in order to read although the room is already dark because the light has been turned off by the parents. Yeah, and the content of the reading will have to be so interesting that your students will stay reading or listening or viewing the materials. Now, you may be wondering if what I'm saying, has any proof, any evidence. Are there people who have actually spent time reading and listening, and as a result, they learn a lot of language? The answer is yes. I've seen a lot of examples from personal observations and also from the professional research literature. Now, here are some of the people that I know who have developed a very high level of proficiency because of the amount of language input that they get, that they immerse themselves in. The first girl there is a Korean teenager. The name is Soda. She said, or she reported when she was interviewed by a researcher, that she read about 1,000 books. In fact, the mother of this girl said that she must have read about 4,000 books, storybooks in English. And because of that, her English language proficiency was so good. And when she took part in English language competition, she won almost every single time. Maybe you're thinking that, well, Korea is a special place. People in Korea are talented, people. That's not true, because it happens in other places as well. This girl, the next one, is from Thailand. Again, Thailand is very much like Indonesia. The majority of the population, they don't speak English. They learn English in school, just like many of our students in Indonesia, but the ability to use English is very minimal. But this girl is special. She watched a lot of cartoons, Disney cartoons, and she picked up a lot of language. And when I spoke to her, she told me that her IELTS score was about 7.5 or 8. Very, very high IELTS score. This is another case of a student who was able to develop a very high level of proficiency by doing a lot of reading and by doing a lot of listening. His IELTS score was 7. His speaking was 8. Speaking ability, as measured by IELTS, is 8. Very, very proficient. The last two are Indonesian teachers. Yeah, the first one on the right-hand side, top right-hand corner, is a docent from USD, Sanata Dharma University. She speaks beautiful, wonderful, very proficient speaker of English. And she said that she watched a lot of movies when she was a student. The same thing happens to the other one. The last person, the last lady, is a docent, a senior lecturer from UM, Malang. Also a very fluent, very proficient speaker of English. Again, the message I'm trying to get across is that these are people who have been very successful in learning English. Yeah, not because they were working very hard, they were listening attentively in the classroom, but I think they went beyond the classroom and they learned a lot on their own by making use of what I called earlier on language input. Yeah, the importance of input in language learning. Now, these are just some examples of the kind of things that I enjoy watching in my free time. Novels and also TV series, Netflix, and things like that. Now, you may be wondering then, because you are English language teachers, yeah? You're always thinking about, hey, what do students learn from reading and from listening? Do they acquire vocabulary? Do they acquire grammar? Or both? Linda, very quick. Vocabulary, grammar, or both?
Well, both.
Yes. Yes. A lot of reading, a lot of listening enables students to learn, to acquire a lot of grammar and a lot of vocabulary. In fact, this is what they learn. Yeah. They learn both together. They learn grammar and vocabulary together, not in separation, not in the way we normally teach our students. Yeah, today grammar, tomorrow vocabulary. No, that's not what happens. Yeah, students learn, students acquire both together. And these words or these phrases are known as lexical chunks. Yeah, lexical bundles, lexical chunks, fixed expressions, or maybe, you are familiar with the terms idiomatic expressions, if you like. Yeah, but researchers refer to this as lexical chunks. Lexis means words, vocabulary. Chunks means they come together. Yeah. So I'm going to show you some examples of words that come together, words that people are, seeing frequently when they read and when they listen. And these are words and grammar that then get acquired, get processed together by the learners of English. Now, here are some examples. See, make do. Yeah, we just have to make do with it. The whole phrase, the whole sentence actually sort of come together. Well, no choice, there's nothing else we can do. We just have to make do with it. Make it up to you. I'm sorry, let me make it up to you tomorrow. Yeah. Make fun of. Again, this comes together. Yeah, things like once upon a time, they also come together. Things like don't leave me alone, they come together. Please don't be late, that comes together. So that's what I mean by lexical chunks. Hey, you made my day. Yeah. Please make up your mind. I've been waiting for 2 hours and you are still thinking. Please make up your mind as quickly as possible. Again, this comes together like that. More examples here. This one is on me. It's lovely to see you. Thanks for coming. I don't believe a word of it. I don't get the point. You look great today. As I was saying, remember, the key thing here that I'm trying to get across is that these words, these expressions, they come together. Lexical chunks, they come in a bundle. You can't really break them up. Yeah, this is how you learn grammar and vocabulary at the same time. Let me say this again. Fluent speakers, proficient users of English must have had hundreds, if not thousands, of these lexical chunks in their head. Now, these are words and phrases that fluent speakers are able to use very quickly, very effortlessly, and automatically as well. And that is what allows them to speak the language with a high degree of proficiency and fluency as well. Okay, that's number 2, yeah? So number 1 is just amount. Number 2 is the quality of processing. It has to be easy. It has to be interesting. And what do they learn from that? A lot of language. And when I say language, that means grammar and vocabulary at the same time, words and phrases that are really, really useful, words and phrases that people actually use when they speak, when they have a conversation, when they have a dialogue with other people, when they describe things and things like that. Yeah, real language use. L number 3, that's the last one, yeah? L number 3 is this, language use. Very, very important. The first 2 is basically input and processing. It happens in your head, yeah? Language use is about using the language. The goal of language learning is to develop fluency and accuracy. The ability to speak, the ability to write quickly, without thinking very much, and smoothly as well, and accurately. So that is the goal of language learning. Again, research tells us very clearly, and I think you know this from your experience, that the only way for you to be able to develop fluency and accuracy is when you repeat things, when you do the same thing again and again and again and again and again. There's no other way. There's no shortcut. There's no shortcut to this. So if you're thinking of a method that will help students develop their fluency in speaking, that method should be called the again and again method. Yeah. Let me invite you to look at this picture. What do you see here in the picture? There are 2 persons there in the badminton court. Yeah. The one on the right-hand side is the coach or the teacher. And the one on the left-hand side is the trainee. Yeah, somebody who is practicing. Somebody who can already play badminton. But look, he is doing the same thing again and again and again and again and again. hundreds of times until he is able to smash the shuttlecock very quickly, very accurately, without difficulty, and even without thinking about it. And maybe being able to place the ball, or the shuttlecock in any place at the opponent's, at the opponent's court. Yeah. So that is the power of repetition. That is the power of doing things again and again and again and again and again. And your job as a teacher is, again, to provide opportunities for the students to do that, to repeat, to do a lot of meaningful repetition, both in the classroom and outside the classroom. Yeah. In other words, this is like a very strange idea. Yeah. Try to get your students to practice what they are already good at. In other words, practice makes perfect. Yeah. Being good only is not good enough. In language learning, you need to be very, very good, so that eventually you are able to write quickly, you are able to speak fluently, and you'll be able to write and speak without much difficulty. And that is the goal of language learning. Yeah. So what happens then after you have done, or after your students have done a lot of repeated practice? Their fluency in reading improve. Yeah, they become more fluent in listening, they become more fluent in speaking, and they become more fluent in writing as well. Okay, let me see if you can fill in the blank here. Linda, people learn to read by reading. Yeah, I think that is true. That is one important principle that we must remember. People learn to read by reading. You have to read a lot in order for you to be able to develop, a high level of reading ability. And people learn to speak by doing a lot of speaking. Yeah, and by by analogy, people learn to listen by, Linda, please say listening, by listening. Yeah. And people learn to write by writing. Yes, so that is what I mean by, the again and again method. If for one whole semester, the amount of speaking that your students do is only 5 minutes or 10 minutes or half an hour for the whole semester or for the whole year, I don't think you'll be able to help your students to develop fluency in speaking or listening or reading, for that matter. So these are the 3 L of language input, the 3 L's that are related to what I feel are the most important principles of second language acquisition. The first one is language input, the second one is language processing, and the third one is language use. Last question. Nerlan, if that is what you do, then can technology improve your English language students' proficiency? Nerlan Konga Emu, please say yes.
Yes, sir.
Very good. Yes, the answer is yes. So, ladies and gentlemen, finally, as I said earlier on, technology is here to stay. Yeah, now and forevermore. In the future, you will see that technology will be used even more extensively, even after the pandemic is over. No choice. Yeah, technology will become very important even when you teach in the classroom. Number 2, keep in mind that technology alone will not produce any important results in students' learning. Technology will have to be supported by a good set of general educational principles and also by a good set of second language learning principles. If that happens, I think you'll become a happier teacher because you can tell yourself that you've done a good job of helping your students develop their English language learning using technology and using important set of pedagogy. So again, can technology improve language learning? I hope the answer is yes. You can provide the response if you want to in the chat box. Very quick, your time is only 3 seconds. Yes, no, or maybe. If your answer is correct, there you go. These books are for you, all free. If your answers are correct, then all these 3 books or 4 books are free, and you can download all these books from my website. And the name of the website is Willy's ELT Corner. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Willy, for your presentation. It's really engaging and it's really inspiring us as teachers to be, and some already being a teacher. So for the question and answer, my colleague Kayla Jahimo will lead the session for some of the questions I think typed for you.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Willy and I'm a student of English Department, Indonesian University. And here I have the privilege to lead this Q&A session. Without hesitation, let's start this Q&A session by looking at the first question here. The first question comes from Agustin Tino Semion. Willy, I just want to know if the 6 principles of a good teaching deal also with building good character of the students. Thank you.
The answer is no. No, those are teaching principles. They have nothing to do with us helping our students develop their character. No. To help your students develop character, very easy. Number 1, be a good model of a good person. I think that is a very simple idea. If you are good, if you are a person of character, if you are a person of integrity, chances are very high that your students will look after you, will look up to you, will do the same thing as you do. Yeah. So the 5 principles that I mentioned earlier on, they have nothing to do with character development. Tidak ada. Yeah, character development is something else. Character development is about developing students' character, about helping our students become a morally responsible person, somebody who can, connect, who can respect differences in the classroom, misalnya. Yeah, who can appreciate that people have different ideas and things like that. And the best thing for you to do that is to model that behavior. Be a good model and your students will follow you, basically. Thank you for the question. Yes, please carry on. Next one.
Yeah, the next question is, sir, I was just surfing the internet and I found that articles about the latest and the greatest technology in education is so many, but few about pedagogy. Why?
Can you say it again? It wasn't very clear.
Yeah, sir.
There is a lot of.
I was just surfing with the internet and I found that articles about the latest and the greatest technology in education is so many, but few about pedagogy. Why?
Yes, very simple reason, because people nowadays are so excited about technology. And there's a lot of new applications in the market, new apps in the market, and people are excited about using the apps. So the purpose of my presentation actually is to remind you that you don't have to use too many, technological tools for teaching. What is important for you is to pick 1, maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe 5, but make sure that you use these tools, with a very clear idea about the kind of pedagogical principles that you want to apply in using those technology. Another reason probably is that maybe you are looking at the wrong way. Maybe you are looking at the wrong place. Yeah, if you look at the right place, you'll be able to find that a lot has been written about pedagogy and how pedagogy can empower teachers in terms of the way they use technology in the classroom. So yes, please spend a bit more time and you'll be able to find a lot more information about pedagogy. Actually, there's a lot more information about pedagogy than technology. Technology is fairly new, basically. It's just that people are excited about technology, and a lot has been written about, technology in the past 20 years. Next question, please.
Yeah. Next question comes from Salmon Pandaranga.
Yeah.
Willy, what is your opinion about the lost learning because of COVID due to no or limited access to internet connection, like what happened
Yes.
in my place and some parts of Indonesia?
Yes, the effect is very bad. It's not just in your place, but in many other places. I think one thing we need to be aware of is that the pandemic is doing a lot of harm to education in the world. So do not feel that you are the only group of people who are suffering. Everyone else in the world are feeling the same thing. So what you need to do is to be more sympathetic. What you need to do is to be more, to change your mindset a little bit. That in the past, for example, you were able to teach so much content, but during the pandemic, you have to reduce the content because it's not possible to teach the same amount of content during the pandemic for various reasons, because students do not have access to the internet, because teachers also are not very good at using the internet in order to engage the students in a non-face-to-face, in a remote teaching environment. So I think the only way we can make sense of the situation that we are facing at the moment is to sort of, change our mindset. And that means, for us to be able to say that this is an unprecedented time. We need to change. We need to look at things differently. Yeah. If in the past students were able to learn 100%, maybe this time around we have to reduce the content to 70%. No choice. And we are not alone, because that is happening everywhere, even in places with advanced technology, with a lot more resources. Teachers are not ready, the parents are not ready, and some of the students do not have access to the internet. Yeah. So we just have to, to admit basically that this is an unusual, situation. The time is just very, very different. So that would be my response. Yeah. So the effect is bad everywhere, even in Singapore. When the students have access to the internet, it's very, very disruptive, because some weeks students have to stay at home, and some weeks all of a sudden they can return to school, and the next day the ministry decided that, well, the students cannot go to school because of new cases emerging in the country. So it has been very, very disruptive. Parents are feeling stressful, and teachers are also feeling stressed, and the children are also feeling under a lot of pressure as well. So the best thing we can do is to sympathize, to increase our compassion, to increase our empathy towards our students and towards parents, and also towards other people involved in education. Next question.
Okay. Apparently there are so many questions in the chat box, but
yeah, summarize.
This is gonna
Summarize
be
one or
the
two.
last question for you, sir.
Yeah.
So this last question comes from Santri Jahimo. Pak Willy, what do you think about ELT teachers who focus more on technology than pedagogy and vice versa?
Okay, Bu Santri, send them for retraining. That would be my advice. Bu Santri, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Bu Santri,
yes,
yes, turn on your webcam.
Yeah.
Yes, if that's what happens, then I think they need retraining. I think they need, they need you. I think you need to tell them that technology is not going to change. The impact of technology is very minimal, as we saw early on.
That's true. Yeah.
I think it's the pedagogy behind that is very important. And in language learning, I think we know exactly what we need to do to improve students' English language proficiency. Your language center, are you in charge of the whole university?
No, I'm in charge for only the faculty.
Oh, only one faculty, not the whole university.
Yeah, only
okay.
FKIP, Willy.
Okay, only FKIP. Okay, Does the university have a language center on its own?
Yeah, it does. It
Okay.
has a language center.
Okay, the reason I'm asking is this. Recently, a top university in Thailand, the name of the university is Chulalongkorn University, and they decided to make it mandatory for all new students, 5,000 of them, to be doing a lot more reading, to be doing a lot more listening in their first year, using XReading.
So is it like a self-selected reading?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, it is a library basically. XReading is a library, but it's digital. It's not a physical library. Yeah, and the library has thousands of books, and the library is not just a library because it is a learning system as well built in. So the teachers can actually can manage the reading program. The teachers can help students choose the kind of reading that they want to do, and the teachers can monitor students' reading. Because ultimately, if you want to see results, if you want to see improvement, then students must spend a lot of time actually doing the reading and the listening. Without the listening and the reading, the English language proficiency will not improve. Thailand is very, very much similar to Indonesia. The students usually don't speak English very well. You can't really depend on what, the lessons that we teach in the classroom. That lesson that we teach is useful, but only to a small extent. Because the research is very clear. If you want to improve, you need at least, that opportunity to read on a daily basis and also to listen to the language also on a daily basis. Daily basis means every day. Every day means at least half an hour. And that takes 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. So, yeah. So that will be my response to your question. Thank you. It was a very good question.
Thank you very much, Willy.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said before, that's gonna be the last question for you. Consider the limitation of our time. So thank you very much, Willy, for answering those questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much again, Willy. If you don't mind to stay with us until the end of the whole presentations, because we will give the last chance for some wrapping up sessions. If that's okay for you, we will be very grateful.
I'll stay.
Thank you very much.